An ordinance to call a special election in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas for September 14, 2021 on the question of whether to levy a 1% sales and use tax within the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, to provide that the levy shall commence on January 1, 2022, to prescribe other matters that pertain to the election and for other purposes. Whereas the Board of Directors of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas passed Little Rock Ordinance 22,011, June 15, 2021, which, if approved by city electors, levies a 1% sales and use tax within the city. And whereas pursuant to Arkansas Code Annotated, Section 2675-308, a municipality, once an ordinance which levies a sales and use tax is adopted, must by ordinance provide for the calling and holding a special election on the question of whether to approve the levy. And whereas the purpose of this ordinance is to call a special election on the question of the levy of the sales and use tax. Now, therefore, be it ordained by the Board of Directors of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, Section 1, a special election is also hereby called to be held on September 14, 2021, at which special election there shall be submitted to the electors of the city the question of the levy of a 1% sales and use tax pursuant to Little Rock, Arkansas Ordinance number 22,011, June 15 of 2021, which start election on January 1st, 2022, and shall cease being levied on December 31st, 2031, and shall be levied on the receipts from the sale at retail of all items and services that are subject to taxation under the Arkansas Gross Receipts Tax Act of 1941 as amended, as set out in Title 26, Chapter 52 of the Arkansas Code of 1987 annotated, and the Arkansas Compensating Use Tax of 1949 as amended, as set out in Title 26, Chapter 53 of the Arkansas Code of 1987 annotated. Section 2, the ballot at the special election on the question of whether to levy the sales and use tax referred to above shall be in substantially the following forms.
All right. Page 203. Vote on measure by placing an X in the square opposite the measure either for or against. For adoption of a 1% local sales and compensating use tax within the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, for which collections of the levy will begin on January 1st, 2022, and shall cease to be levied on December 31st, 2031. Against adoption of a 1% local sales and compensating use tax within the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, for which collections of the levy will commence on July 1st, 2022, and shall cease to be levied on December 31st, 2031. Section 3. The election shall be held and conducted, and the vote canvassed and the results declared under the law and in the manner now provided for municipal elections, unless otherwise provided in Title 26, Chapter 75, Subchapter 2 of the Arkansas Code of 1987, annotated, the authorizing legislation, and only qualified voters of the city shall have the right to vote at the election. Section 4. The results of the election shall be proclaimed by the mayor, and his proclamation shall be published one time in a newspaper having a general circulation in the city, which proclamation shall advise that the results as proclaimed shall be conclusive unless attacked in the courts within 30 days after the date of publication. Section 5. A certified copy of this ordinance shall be filed with the Pulaski County Clerk at least 60 days prior to the election date. Section 6. A certified copy of this ordinance shall be provided to the County Board of Election Commissioners so that the necessary election officials and supplies may be provided. Section 7. A certified copy of this ordinance shall be provided to the Commissioner of Revenues of the State of Arkansas as soon as practical. Section 8. The mayor and city clerk or recorder for and on behalf of the city be, and they are hereby authorized and directed to do any and all the things necessary to call and hold this special election as herein provided, and if the levy of the sales and use tax is approved by the electors, to cause the sales and use tax to be collected in accordance with the authorizing legislation, and to perform all acts of whatever nature necessary in a timely fashion to carry out the authority conferred by this ordinance. Section 9. Any and other required steps not expressly set forth in this ordinance shall also be conducted in a timely fashion in order to accomplish the purposes set out within this ordinance. In section 10, I'm going to let Commissioner Inman start that so I don't interrupt half of it.
Thank you. Section 10, because the 3/8 cent 0.0037 cents sales and compensating use tax authorized in Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 2450, July 11th, 2011, approved by the vote of the people, shall expire and collection shall cease on December 31st, 2021. The aggregate increase in the levy of a sales and compensating use tax upon successful implementation of the tax authorized in this ordinance is only 5/8 cent, 0.0025 cents. When the levy commences on January 1, 2022. Section 11, severability. In the event any section, subsection, subdivision, paragraph, subparagraph, item, sentence, clause, phrase, or word of this ordinance is declared or adjudged to be invalid or unconstitutional, such declaration or adjudication shall not affect the remaining provisions of this ordinance, as if such invalid or unconstitutional provision was not originally part of this ordinance. Section 12, repealer. All ordinances, resolution, bylaws, and other matters inconsistent with this ordinance, including but not limited to Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 2449, July 11th, 2011, and Little Rock, Arkansas ordinance number 2450, July 11th, 2011, are hereby repealed to the extent of such inconsistency. Passed June 15th, 2021, attested Allison Seegers, Deputy City Clerk, Frank Scott Jr., Mayor of Little Rock, and Thomas M. Carpenter, City Attorney.
So we have received the certificate of election. Is there anything else we need to do regarding the certificate?
Just acknowledge through a motion that you received it, and the election will be held on the date called for in the ordinance.
I'll make the motion to acknowledge the receipt of the certificate and the calling of the election on September 14th, 2021.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The motion is passed. All right, our next item of business is to designate election day and early vote polling locations. I do know that the request I had made was to designate election day and voting centers and polling locations. So are we doing that?
Well, Commissioner Starr, the statute does not mention
Designate
vote
that.
centers. It mentions election day and early vote sites. So vote centers are by definition an election day site, so that falls under that category.
I understand. I just want to make sure that's what we're doing today. All right, thank you. Okay, go ahead.
So in the city of Little Rock, as I mentioned, we have roughly 120,000 voters. Past elections, just for your information, 2016, there was a Little Rock bond election, and there was about 6.6% voter turnout, about just shy of 8,000 voters.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second? Was that the election that was held right before or after the primary election?
I don't have the election date.
Because if it was, that would determine a different type of turnout. Because this election's being held in September, and it's after school has started, it's after Labor Day, so most people will be around. I think we're gonna have a different type of turnout than we would typically have for an election that's bumping up before the primary.
What kind of turnout are you expecting?
I would expect us to have a double-digit turnout, higher than if that's the election I recall, because I remember we were doing the special election, when the special elections bill, I went through all those elections, and there was an election, I believe it was 2016, where it was literally, because it was one that upset me, it was like 3 weeks before primary, and it was a pretty low turnout, which I can understand why. So, and I'm prefacing that because if we're looking at locations based on a lower number, we really probably need to think about a higher number based on that. I think there's going to be a lot of attention to this to this
There's
election.
another election that's kind of similar. There was a Little Rock School District special election in 2017, and they had right at 10% turnout, about 11, a little over 11,000 voters. So
Mhm.
somewhere between 6 and 11,000 voters is probably what you can expect.
Could you look up that in your historical records and see what date was and turnout?
Do you want us to do that right now?
I think it'd be helpful for,
You want to go?
I'm gonna,
I can look it up myself.
I mean, I don't have a computer or anything in front of me, so.
I'm gonna, we need to remember we're operating under Robert's rules for one as a board. But I would like to say that we're not for one gonna operate on this election based on what previous turnout is, because history has told us in elections that that's not how it works. I mean, we can look at what the last presidential election and what happened in the previous presidential election, and it did not predict anything. I do not want voters to be disenfranchised in this citywide election. I know there's a lot of focus on this election, but for us, we need to make sure that all voters have access to their regular polling site in the city of Little Rock. So for the purpose of this board, we want to have all polling sites available for voters within the city of Little Rock, that they are going to their typical voting site to vote.
I think that's the intention of what we're gonna do.
Right.
The Little Rock election 2016 was February 9th. And it became before the primary.
So I just want to give you all that information. You can use it, not use it, doesn't matter. I just throw that out there as a frame of reference for you. We have two maps in front of you. On the left is the city of Little Rock. That's the boundaries of Little Rock. You can, this shows more the whole county with polling locations, but in your packet, I put a list of the polling places that, and this is not what you'll be signing, this is just for your information as we go through the discussion, or as y'all go through the discussion. And we have made recommendations for combining certain polling locations, and Amanda will get into greater detail, but I wanted to point out a couple of things. The very first polling location, 58, has a star next to it. That's a name change. So if a polling location in this list is bolded, italicized with a star, it's a name change. If it does not have a star, then that would be a temporary polling place change just for this election. The other location that has a name change is precincts 99 and 100. The Harvest Church used to be called St. Luke. And the reason that there are, I didn't get a count of how many we combined, but in many cases, the city of Little Rock splits precincts, and there are very, very few voters that may be in a precinct that would normally vote outside. The polling place would be outside the city of Little Rock, and but the voters live in the city of Little Rock, and in fact may live closer to the precinct polling place that we have identified on this list, and to put those voters in. In several situations, we're talking about a handful, a couple dozen voters out of 2,000 or 3,000 in the entire precinct. So those are the election day precincts, and then at the last page has the early vote sites. The only thing I would mention about the early vote sites is that we have 7 listed. In the general election of November of 2020, we used 8 early vote sites that were in the city of Little Rock. The Hillary Clinton Library, it was the first time we'd ever used it. It was in the November 2020 election, and the turnout there was abysmal. During early voting on election days, Vote Center, I mean, they trailed far behind any other early vote site, Vote Center, or even precinct polling place. And so we're recommending that in future elections, we don't use Hillary Clinton. It was a test. We don't think it worked out very well. People just weren't interested in voting there. So those are the polling locations that we recommend.
I have two questions. One's probably gonna be a dumb question, but it's the only location that says not Little Rock. So, College Station, is that Little Rock?
It is, that's the address there.
Amanda?
Part of it is outside the city of Little Rock. I can show you the map. So basically right in here,
Okay,
this little white area in the middle is College Station. It's in the county. This little outskirt part where it starts getting shaded back in again, that's where your voters are that are actually in the city of Little Rock.
okay.
Okay.
The polling sites is just slightly outside of that, but that is their location to vote at. It's still fairly close.
Does that
So
create an issue?
I don't see where it would create an
Okay.
issue.
My question about the early voting site is regarding Manual City Center. That was one of the tasks for the previous director, was getting them on board to do a site, because we really are lacking in that area off the interstate. So what is the status of that?
Turn this down for the general, we were going to revisit that at a later time, but due to COVID, they turned us down to be an early vote site.
Right.
Back in 2020.
Have we followed up with them since everything's passed and they're open?
I'm not aware if we have, but.
Can we please reach out to them?
So Bart Moreland, who keeps up with the polling places, he has been in touch with them. So far, they have not really warmed up to the idea, but I mean, we will stay on that. That is a high priority. Would be one of the very best sites in the county.
Absolutely. Location is, key critical centralized location. So if we could just, if I reach out to them again, just make sure that they're not available for this. I mean, they're called the city center. I can't think of a better location for the city of Little Rock. Really, that's not.
They are available as an election day polling place.
Is it the church or the city center that they're gonna be available for?
I believe it's in the church.
Can we make sure that, because they may prefer to do it in the city center.
But I know during COVID, they used the city center for their church services, so that's why they turned us down.
Right. Well, now they're doing the services back in the church, so I think it would actually be better to have it in the city center, because it's better parking, better access. So if we could verify that, and honestly, it would be better to be in the city center. And I know they have events and stuff, so we could just check on that.
So I have a question too, on precinct 99 and 100. But for Harvest Church, you have two different addresses. Is that just a typo? 6401?
Oh, yes, it's 6401.
Okay,
I can fix that.
okay.
I don't think it's that way.
Which brings up a good point. We
It is.
we need to make sure that on these addresses when these are placed on, that we are consistent and not having road, RD, or ROD, RID, we have parkway or abbreviation. We need to have all abbreviations or all spelled out throughout for consistency and clarity. Especially if people are trying to identify an address that may not be familiar with the area. They may not know, they may be new to the area but live around the area. They may not know, let me make sure there's not any on here they won't be familiar with. And if we're going to use E for east, we need to use E for east on all of it. If we're going to spell it out, we just need to spell it out. But just let's do all the same and just kind of be consistent with it. Because we have that on Woodlawn too. We have Woodlawn, then right next to each other on 110 and 111. Then we have Woodlawn Drive, like they're two different locations. But that's the same street, right?
Which
Which one are you talking about?
On 110 and 111. It's not the same address, but it's the same street.
110 and 111 are two different polling locations.
Right.
But they're still on
But
level.
that's the same street, right?
Yeah.
That's not a different street, and I can see how
Oh,
that
right.
that
I
gets
see.
confusing, is what I'm saying. We just want to make sure it's clear.
And so is 108 and 110 and.
That's where it get in your mind to start, is that a different road? Because you know how there are roads that are named the same.
Well, most of the people that live there know where the church is.
We don't want to disenfranchise new voters.
Of course not.
Is there anything else about the early vote sites? Did you have anything, Commissioner Scott?
I don't see any issues.
So is the plan to turn these early vote sites into vote centers?
That's up to the board. The recommendation that we have, as it relates to vote centers, so there are several concerns that come up about the vote centers, and how the early vote sites work will depend on, whether or not vote centers are used. There's a couple of problems that we encountered using the vote centers in November. The first is that the election system in Arkansas is designed to operate as either a precinct-based or a vote center-based system. And when I say system, I mean all of the pieces of the system. The hybrid system was not contemplated by the voting equipment software vendor or by the Secretary of State. Pulaski County is the only place, certainly in Arkansas, but the only place that ES&S has ever worked with that tried a hybrid system in the November election. In preparation for the 2020 election, ES&S spent several days developing a one-time emergency patch to allow the Express Poll tablets to actually work, because it was not contemplated to have a hybrid system. That patch was a one-time thing, it doesn't exist. And so, our recommendation is that until an upgrade is made to the ES&S software to enable both, the capability for a hybrid system, we recommend going with either vote centers or precinct polling places, but not both. The other piece of that is that vote centers were used to expand voter access to voting during the presidential general election, and with a small election with between 6,000 and 11,000 voters, we don't really expect the turnout to justify needing multiple additional places to vote, because the precinct polling places should be able to handle the voter turnout. There shouldn't be long lines or anything like that.
So you're recommending that we not use vote centers for this election?
If we use precinct polling places, we recommend not to use the vote centers in conjunction with them. If the board wants to shift to vote centers, then that will begin a process to make the shift. But just an anecdote. When it took a while before ES&S actually realized what we were telling them when we had a hybrid system. They've never contemplated that, so it caused a big problem, and they didn't. I don't know that they necessarily can guarantee that it would work, but we found out it did work. But I don't know if we want to move forward knowing that there's that uncertainty.
What if, just throw this out there for consideration, what if you had your early voting centers as always serving for the week or 4 to 5 days before the election, and kept them open on Monday for anyone, and not just the regional location, to make more access and more locations available, and then have your election day polling places as they would be normally on election day.
We can
Because
certainly do
of
that.
the problem with what you're explaining with the poll books.
The problem that comes with the vote centers
Yeah.
and the precinct polling places open at the same time.
Gotcha.
So the early vote sites are really not an issue.
What do y'all think about that? Maybe.
I would like ES&S to come speak to us about this, because this is the first time this has been brought to our attention, which is very surprising. Because I haven't seen a single email or communication regarding this issue, at all. And it's very surprising because I've talked to other counties that used a hybrid model previously. So, and they used ES&S. So I would like them to come and speak to us regarding this issue and ways that we can do this, because we've been talking about piloting more vote centers throughout the county to slowly get to where we need to be, because obviously we can't just go out and buy all the machines at once unless the county just gives us a blank check, and I don't think they're gonna do that,
So the vote center model is set up for election day. They use the early voting centers as vote centers.
we use the early voting centers as vote centers. That's what we
Yeah,
did in
but
the
they
previous
became
election.
vote centers on election day. and
Correct.
Quit being early voting centers on election
Correct.
day. So is it something about the voter ID of identifying where they voted?
Amanda, do you want to address
I
that?
mean, we
believe
probably
the
need
issue
somebody
was
to-
with, the voter registration data being loaded onto the poll books, and you have to assign voters to a poll. So they were having an issue, you have a precinct-specific poll that these voters are assigned to, but they can also go vote in any of these other vote centers.
They're having,
So it was a
okay,
back end fix that they had to do. Make voters eligible to vote at their specific site, and they can also vote in these other
Oh, to
sites.
vote both, be either
They
or.
can be on both
Okay.
poll books.
And they couldn't, and the early voting is a different whole set of
Right,
data.
everybody can just go anywhere, on election day.
okay. I still want a solution for that. I want them to come up with a solution for that, because I know that we're not, I looked at everybody's vote center plan. That's one thing that, Brian had sent to myself to kind of go over to come up with an idea of how we can do this. Not Brian, I'm sorry, Josh Bridges.
What if you had like one vote center?
It doesn't, it still is the same issue.
Would that be?
It's all, if there's any vote centers, it causes the problem.
And it's just a matter of the word, early vote versus vote center. kind of.
Not really, they're programmed differently. You know, election day, as Amanda said, the voters are all assigned to a poll, to a precinct polling place. With the vote centers, they have to be assigned to both. With early voting, it's just everybody's out there, anybody can vote at any of them. Because the machines are programmed in early voting such that it doesn't matter where your precinct polling place is, but election day is just a different thing in the programming of the election.
Well, but when the voter comes in and, identifies themselves, they're given the ballot style for precinct, whatever their number is. And that's recorded in the voter registration database, right?
Right.
I guess I'm not getting what the problem could be.
It was assigning a voter to multiple locations on election day.
Okay. But you don't know who the voters are.
Well, in the voter registration database, you absolutely know all the voter registration information. And they, in the grand scheme of things, if you think back to the paper poll books, they have one place they can go on election day. Now, early voting, they could go anywhere. But election day is a different animal than early voting. And with vote centers, it tries to superimpose early voting onto election day. And that causes a problem in the programming of the tablets. I mean, we proved in the general election that everybody's vote got counted. There, no more mistakes than normal with finding the right polling place or anything like that. But I don't know how they did it, and I don't know that they could do it again. But they didn't make a permanent change to their software. They put a patch in place for that election only.
So what is the timeliness of setting these polls today?
I have to know about Monday.
Okay.
I'm programming the election on Monday. So
It seems
approve the
like-
ballots.
Seems like to me that we would want to use our proven method since we have a short time frame to the elections and that we're facing, don't you think?
Yes.
I definitely do with the time constraints. which would be election day and early. But you can decide whether to have early on Monday.
That decision doesn't have to be made today.
Okay.
We just have to decide which sites we're opening, and then future decisions can be made
Okay.
at a later date.
What do y'all think about that?
I think we're just gonna go ahead and make the decision today. But I do want ES&S to come and talk to us about these issues.
We were very surprised ourselves. We didn't know it was an issue. It came up at the very last minute.
Yeah, I do want them to come speak to us about these issues and a solution, so that we can pilot, some more, that was the whole point, and we put that in our budget to pilot 20 more locations. So, can't do that if they can't fix that problem. As we expand and provide more voter access.
So we're proposing 9 sites, is that what we have?
We have,
So on the early vote list, there are 7 sites.
7.
So in the general election, there were 8. We're proposing that we not use Hillary Clinton because it was just very little interest from the public, from the voting public, in using that site.
That's odd. It's a good location.
We like it, but the voters, for whatever reason, didn't show. They didn't come.
But they weren't used to it.
parking is probably a big issue.
But they did come to the Terry and the Fletcher libraries, which were also new. Those outperformed our expectations. And they were new for the first time. So
Well, but that part of town is where you're gonna have more turnout anyway.
I do want to mention one other thing as you all are considering the early vote sites. I did talk to the city of Little Rock prior to this meeting. And let me see. They were recommending 4 early vote sites. They recommended EV1 in this building, the Sid McMath Library, the D. Brown Library, and the Sue Cowan Library.
I'm sure they did.
I just
But
wanted
I
to let you know.
will happily tell the mayor, as I was gonna reach out to him again like I did during the general and ask for parking, and he obliged to get us some parking around downtown. I'm gonna ask for parking again during this election to give us some parking. And we're gonna give him 7 early voting sites. And we're gonna give him, how many sites do we have here?
52 election day.
52 election day sites to ensure that all of the city of Little Rock has a chance to vote in this election. Because I know he wants everyone to participate in this election.
Yeah, one is expensive too.
It is expensive. If I remember the numbers correctly, I had requested this during COVID. Because the change in the minimum wage had increased and then the step up, it went from around $100,000 to about $150,000 a year, $150,000 for the special election cost. So it could, waited a little bit longer, it would have been different, but that's where we are. We're doing our duty, and so we want to make sure that everyone, the cost doesn't change based on.
It does change.
No, it doesn't change based on, we still have to do all these things. So if the people are coming, we're gonna have still the same amount of poll workers, we're gonna still be doing the same thing. So we wanna make sure that everybody has a chance to vote.
Well, and keeping with that, the familiar locations are what people will expect to attend.
Correct. So we wanna make sure that nobody is assuming they're going to their polling site and then it's closed and they don't know where to go. We don't want that issue. And they're familiar with these early vote sites, and I think that's helpful. And we want to make sure, and I think this is one of the things that we're going to create a social media campaign to make sure that people understand where they vote and what City of Little Rock residency means. But there's a lot that gets really confusing. Sometimes you're in the county, but it has Little Rock as your address, and that's confusing. So we want to make sure that people understand that, and that they don't just show up to early vote sign and they get frustrated when they vote provisional. And so I think that's very important. So do I have a motion?
I have a motion to accept the sites as recommended, the early voting sites and the election day sites.
For the,
Yes, for the September 14, 2021 Little Rock special election.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The designated election day and early voting polling locations have been approved.
And Commissioner, Chairman Starr, I also have the temporary polling place change orders. I don't know if you want to read those in or not, but if you want, there's a lot of signatures to be made. I will make the changes to this that you've identified because there are a couple of incorrect addresses, and I can make those before you sign those.
Yes.
So I can, whatever order you want to do it in, but I do want to go ahead and give you these change orders.
Are there
These
any-
are all outlined on the, what you have in front of you.
Are any of these going to be changed when we sign them?
Say that again?
Are these correct? There's nothing that needs to be changed when we sign
Right,
these?
those are all correct.
Okay. Now, do these need to be read?
Not necessarily, if you want to, you could just read, precinct 61 is moving from this location to this location. And I think there's only 8 of them.
Shall we take turns?
Yeah, I'm just going to divide it in half.
And what are we reading into the record, the changes that you've identified on here?
It's
Yeah, they are reflected on there, but those are the changes, the places that had just a small number of voters, we moved those in and combined them with other polling places.
I'll just take turns. Whoever wants to go first, go ahead.
You want me to go first?
Go ahead.
Temporary polling location for precinct 85 for the September 14, 2021 Little Rock special election in Pulaski County, Arkansas. We, the undersigned Pulaski County Board of Election Commissioners, do hereby name Second Baptist Church, 1709 John Barrow Road in Little Rock, a new polling location for precinct 85 voters formerly voting at W.W. Williams Northwest Patrol Division at 100001 Keynes Road in Little Rock. We order that said voting location for precinct 85 voters shall become effective only for the Little Rock special election that will be conducted on September 14th. This order shall be filed with the county clerk of Pulaski County upon entry of the official record.
If you want, you could just read the change.
Okay. St. Mark's Episcopal Church, 1000 North Mississippi in Little Rock. We're naming it to be the new polling location for precinct 93 voters, formerly voting at the First Church of Nazarene, 1200 North Mississippi in Little Rock, Arkansas. So therefore, precinct 93 voters shall become effective only for this Little Rock special election. St. Mark's Episcopal Church, 1000 North Mississippi, is a new polling location for, that's the same thing I just read. I guess it's not different precinct. For precinct 94 voters formerly voting at the First Church of the Nazarene at 1200 North Mississippi, which is a block away or so. And Metropolitan Career Center at 7701 Scott Hamilton is the new polling location for precinct 125. Voters formerly voting at Baseline Academy, 2623 Baseline Road. We therefore order that the voting location for precinct 125 voters shall become effective only for the Little Rock special election for September 14th.
Sign this one.
Okay. Precinct 61, the polling place, Highland Valley United Methodist Church at 15524 East Chenal Parkway is being changed to a new polling place for the precinct 61 voters that were formerly voting at Pilgrim Rest Baptist Church at 23908 Colonel Glen Road. That's becoming effective only for the Little Rock special election conducted on September 14, 2021. For precinct 63 voters, Highland Valley United Methodist Church at 15524 Chenal Parkway in Little Rock is being named as the polling place, the new polling place for voters that were Precinct 63 voters formerly voting at Martindale Baptist Church at 18900 East Colonel Glen Road, Little Rock. And this shall be effective only for the Little Rock special election conducted on September 14, 2021. For Precinct 69 voters, the Temple B'nai Israel at 3700 North Rodney Parham Road is a new polling location for the Precinct 69 voters who formerly were voting at First Baptist Church of Little Rock at 62 Pleasant Valley Drive, Little Rock. And this is effective only for the Little Rock special election conducted on September 14, 2021. For Precinct 71 voters, there's a new polling location at Asbury United Methodist Church, 1700 Napa Valley Drive, Little Rock. That's for voters that were formerly voting at Brady Masonic Lodge, 11805 Henson Road in Little Rock. This change is only effective for the Little Rock special election that will be conducted on September 14, 2021. For Precinct 78 voters, there's a new polling site at the Emmanuel Baptist Church, 501 Shackelford Road, Little Rock. And that is a new polling location for voters from Precinct 78 that formerly were voting at W.W. Williams, Northwest Patrol Division, 10,001 Canis Road in Little Rock. And this change is effective only for the Little Rock special election conducted on September 14, 2021.
You go ahead and sign those.
I did.
Oh, you did, okay.
So Emmanuel was at the location for the people that formed Williams
Yes.
Travel station?
So
Pretty far away.
we previously had two precincts at the W.W. Williams. We had 78 and 85. We moved 78 to Emmanuel and 85 to Second Baptist because W.W. Williams is no longer available as a polling location.
Why didn't you just move both of them?
We're 85, precinct 85, is closer to Second Baptist. We don't want to put too many in, because we already have 77 and 75. We have over 2,000 voters, so we didn't want to put too many.
So, but why didn't you put them at Second Baptist? I mean, instead.
I think it was a little closer.
I remember Riley's polling place at Donner.
Yeah, it's just right up Interstate 430 to Emmanuel. And Second Baptist is
It's on John Barrett.
right over here on John Barrel, so they would have to go down Canis. The voters are right in here. Here's that location and Emmanuel's right there.
Mhm.
It's just a straight shot of the freeway.
Yeah.
Figured it'd be easier to commute.
Yeah. All right, anything else you need on that?
No, I will, when we get to a different place, I will go and make these changes, and there's just one place for you all to sign on this actual polling place order,
Okay,
and then that would be done.
okay. Let's see here. Do we need to sign this?
That's just for your information.
Okay. All right. So the next item of business, is discussion of time and date of next meeting. So I have the next meeting as July 21st, July 20th, I can't remember now, Wednesday.
I had asked for this discussion
Correct.
because I will be traveling to see my kids and grandkids that
Let's see.
day. And I asked if it could be moved to the day before or another day. And
I'm working around my physical therapy schedule is the problem. 1 second. And a child. What is your schedule like, Commissioner Scott?
What are the other proposed dates?
That's what I'm looking at.
I asked if maybe
Before?
20th, yeah.
The
one day
20th?
Before the 20th, or the day before that, Monday or Tuesday.
The 20th would be the earliest that we'd have the ballots ready for you all to review.
Right.
I mean, I can do the 20th if that works for everyone.
The
The
ballots
reason
will
I'm
be ready.
asking, Christie, commissioners, is you have something else on to propose on that date. We will certifying the ballot style, of course, that's important, and I'm not sure that it couldn't be possibly be done by 2, a quorum. But my question, my concern was that nepotism policy, I want to be here when that's heard.
I'm not doing the nepotism policy.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm not actually doing it.
Okay.
I have a different policy I'm doing.
Okay. Well, I just like that to be done when I'm around.
And I'm not gonna be doing the policy. I'm actually gonna be sitting to you today, and then we're gonna review it all together.
Okay.
But I'm not gonna be doing I'm replacing it with the communications policy. So no, that's no. But I think I can do it on the 20th. It depends if he can pick up my daughter on the day. That's my conflict, Amanda. I have physical therapy on Monday, so. Okay, yeah, we can move it till Tuesday.
You want to keep it at 5?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wait, hold on. Let me make sure I don't have a meeting. Check my work schedule. Yes, I can do that. Yeah,
Okay.
Thank you.
no problem.
5 on Tuesday.
5 on Tuesday?
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so that is, just certifying the ballot styles,
Right.
right, okay. So,
We have a hand up.
I'm sorry, I think I missed it. Can you just confirm what day we're talking about in time, just for the record again?
oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Tuesday, July 20th at 5 p.m.,
Excellent.
certifying ballot styles
Thank you.
only. I do have a new policy. I was trying to email and it will not come out. And it's a simple communications policy, a simplified one. We have a plan that's listed on our website, but it was only for the general election. So this one is a policy in the new policy format that is simplified, and so that we're numbering them as we go and then have effective dates. And the idea is to send it out to everyone, let you review it, and then we discuss it before the effective date that I have on it, which would be on the 28th. So I'm trying to look at when all of our meetings are.
Wait.
Let's see here. It's not controversial or
I
anything.
know, but I gave you my dates, but I will be gone. This is the only trip I have planned. I've got to see my grandkids.
Well, we meet again on the,
25th of August is what you proposed, which is fine. I'll be back.
oh, is that, we don't meet again until August?
It wasn't suggested to me, and I'll be back on August the 3rd.
For some reason, I thought we met in July.
No, just the end of July, the 25th 20th now, and then the next thing we have to do is the big one where we do the notice of election, LNA, election officials, not certified election accuracy. That doesn't have to be done to the inbox.
That's fine. I'll move that. I'll move the effective date then until the end of August. And then I'll email the policy, which is just a simple policy about saying that we'll have professional decorum. We will, we will put all things that are public on the website. When we have things in our meeting, we will make sure to put our memos and all of our document information, all of our meeting documents that are required, our recordings, our links of live stream, making sure that we're putting that kind of information. I'm more than happy to read it. I mean,
That brings up,
absolutely.
that brings up a thought. I was trying to get to a meeting minute, and there's some broken links on the site. I was trying to look at some previous minutes and found broken links just for information.
So.
And I'd like to ask one quick thing before we
No, go ahead.
go.
I was just about to open
Yeah.
it to business, so.
Okay. Sean had made, had told us at the last meeting, had talked about taking some steps to foster the relationship between the commission and staff. And I was just curious if he had come up with any ideas about that. I think I would like to also say that I would, in the same vein as that, I would like to see some steps towards enhancing our ability to do our job of overseeing. I'd like to have access to all the policy books, all the access to the network drives, etc., where we could actually see the things that we need to see. So when you're thinking about some of those things, maybe think about those as well. And as I said to you when you said that, I think it's a very good idea, and we're all for it.
So that was what I was going to mention in my next statement, is that I had requested, again, all the information that we had previously requested. And I did receive a reply, and I wanted to clarify that information. So I will be in transparency. Find it. A lot of emails. Okay. I had requested information regarding access to the Pulaski County Election Commission email. So you may be receiving emails now. Are you receiving emails?
A ton of them, and a lot of it is spam.
Well, you need to be receiving those emails. So, and there's a reason to be receiving those emails, because, if the Secretary of State or the State Board or anyone is sending emails, which they should be using that email, and that's something that we need to bring up here in a second. But if there's any communications that's happening and we're not getting those emails, and then we can't make a decision by the board, and then we're held responsible for not doing that, then we have a problem, because we're not getting communications for us to make a decision.
So what have you missed, or what has not come through? Because State Board send it to our email.
The State Board is not sending it to our email. The State Board is sending it to staff. So we're going to fix that, and make sure that the State Board is sending information to the official email and not to people. And I think that's also a problem, because I think information's going still to maybe the previous director and not coming to us. So that needs to be addressed. But hopefully with using the official email, that will clear some of that up.
Only clear it up if that's what they're using.
Commissioner Inman, let me finish. Also, issues regarding access. This is not completely addressed regarding the office hours, but one of the requests was having access. So the response that was received was saying that we have access during normal business hours and at times required by law. And of course, we would have access as accommodated by the director, I'm assuming that means Sean, and warehouse access as accommodated by others. I requested templates, and this is something that has been an ongoing request. But what this means is, and the request was, this is vague, and we don't know what we have, and we can't name it because we don't know what's out there. So what I mean by a template is, this is a template. This is a template. The notice of election's a template. Anything that we receive that we sign off on, anything that we have that we put our names on it, anything that we have to submit to any entity that was required, anything that's put in training material, anything we have to do as part of our duties is a template. This is a template. We need to have those on our shared OneDrive so that we can review those, because we can't update or look at processes if we don't know what's available. But we can't name what's available because we don't know what's available. And that was what the email response was, is it's vague because you're not naming what's available. Well, how do I know what's available? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's impossible for me to know what's available. So we can't go through there and modernize processes if we don't know what's out there. And we don't know what's being used on our behalf because we don't have access to it. So we're just trying to understand what is available. Correct, the processes, policies, procedures.
Policies and procedures manuals, all that should be uploaded so that we can look at it.
And ideally, the goal is to get to a place that it's combined into a single manual, into a single document, instead of having all this hodgepodge of information all over the place. So that if someone comes to us and they're like, what is your process on X? It's just not all over the place, and we can identify it and we can get it really quickly. That's the goal. It's not to try to say, we're not trying to make it work, we're just trying to make it easy. And we're trying to make sure that everything is, for one, that we understand what the processes are. Two, that if there's an improvement that we all need to make, that we make it now. Obviously, we have some issues, and we need to address those, but we can't address those until we understand all the different pieces. So we need to gather it all and look at it. We need to get with the poll workers, and we need to get with everybody that's involved and look at how we can improve it. So we need to gather all that information. The other, in just 1 second, please. And then look at how we've done it in the past as well, and why it's changed over time. And look at how others are doing it elsewhere, and how what's working for them, and other states as well. I think it's always good to see how it works elsewhere. The other part is, so we place the meeting minutes and recordings on the SharePoint, but we need to make sure those are also on the website. The budget, that's something that we're going to be required to do. So the budget's on the SharePoint now. Thank you. This is the personal keys. The fact that we still don't know who all has keys to certain things, we need to find that information, because that is a security thing. Let's see, contact information's on SharePoint. So a lot of information has been placed on SharePoint. I appreciate that. And honestly, it's been a week, so I haven't had a chance to go through and think of things, but I plan to, on any free time I have, and over the weekend, think of other items. I thought of something at lunch about, like reconciliation types of sheets, and I know there's a law coming down about provisional ballot reporting and things like that. But I think the state board is going to be creating a spreadsheet that you can auto-populate So things like that, we just kind of want to think through and get ahead, so, yes, go ahead.
So you're talking about templates and documents, what do you, like a template for a proclamation or a template for a spreadsheet to add polls to? Are you looking for a fixed document that's gonna be like locked into setting up an election, you know, you need the proclamation?
All of it.
But do you want it broken into each election cycle where you can, I mean, one size doesn't fit all.
We need all of it so that if the staff wasn't here, we could do the election.
That's where you're going with it, right?
I mean, no, truly, if something happened and we had no staff, or if something happened and, I mean, if for one thing, there's two different issues here. There's two different scenarios. There's the issue of you should always have a disaster recovery plan and have all your information.
I totally agree.
And we don't.
Well,
There's
I think
also
it probably is.
there's also the issue of we have information that has not been updated. And there's information that we may have repetitive information, we may have outdated information, we may have information that we've been using for the last 15 years that we may honestly want to modernize. So,
Who is this we?
process,
Who is this
Us.
the board.
All of us.
The board.
Us three.
The board. So, and I only speak because the board as a body as a whole can do things. No individual can. So we need to be looking at our processes for improvement. We need to look at our templates for improvement. We need to make sure that we always have access because at the end of the day, we are responsible, period. We as the board are responsible. So it was made very clear that only we can administer elections. So if we don't have access to the things to administer elections or know what we have to administer the elections, and if we don't have the reporting features or the functions or the things that we need to do that, and we don't know what's necessary to do that, such as some type of report for UACAPA, which I still haven't, I don't know what that is or what that looks like. I need to see what that looks like. So when I'm being told you're getting reprimanded for a report you didn't submit, I need to know what that report looks like. I mean, that's just a simple, I don't know why that shouldn't be that hard. That should not be, no one should get mad for me asking that question. That should not be an issue.
I totally agree. I don't know why you haven't seen it already. I mean, the data comes from the clerk, and it's just a matter of sending it in.
That's.
Is it a form? Is it not a form?
I mean, there were reports in the last election that we did, you got the report.
You got it from,
Well, I mean, I got it from the clerk and I gave it to the commission in the last, I guess, election night.
I get you. I think that there could be improvements made to help them do their work. I just don't think we need to, spend months and months redoing everything in the office. And it may take getting an intern or someone to come in with some expertise to come in.
This isn't redoing, it's getting access to these things.
Yeah, but somebody's got to redo it so you can have access. Put it where it is you want, where you can see it. And then you also need to decide what you're going to do with it.
Uploading is
not
redoing.
difficult.
But if you have data in multiple places, you're going to have to consolidate it. Somebody has to do that.
Yes.
Yes.
And we have to do our statutory duty.
And I'm well aware of what those statutory duties are. I've been around the bend a little bit in this business. So, and I'm eager to work with everyone and get everything rolling nice and smoothly once again. And so, I mean, I'm committed to whatever it is we can do to help them do their job and us do our job.
But change is hard, but I do this for a living, process and projects. And, it's hard, but it's just organization and having everything ready. And I know that that's already done because you couldn't do an election if you're not extremely organized and you know every process that you're going to do next. I mean, y'all wouldn't be able to get anything done if you weren't like, if your mind didn't think like that. You wouldn't possibly, mainly you wouldn't be able to do if that's not how you work. So you're already there. It's just we need to think like that, and we need to be more. We need to use technology and how we're, maintaining some of this stuff. So that, and I absolutely agree with you. I asked to use interns actually last year. That was one of the things I requested. I talked to the previous director. I would like to have used an intern for data entry on spreadsheets. That's one of the things I requested. So I think it would be fantastic to have someone come in here to help with some of these items and some of these things. We don't have the ability to hire anybody. So it would be lovely to have an intern come in here and help with some of the data side of it. I would love to, and that's some of the things I'm thinking through in my head right now, is how to, empower somebody to come in here and do some of those things to get us all on the same page to ensure that we're, following the processes that we need to be following, doing what we need to do as we've been asked to do by the state board, also with new laws going into place, and making sure that the process that we currently have are what is going to adhere to what they're asking us to do, and just really taking a hard look at that. So, and it's difficult when elections keep popping up. I get that, but we can't do that if we don't have it, if we can't look at it, and that's the struggle. We need to be able to see it, and that's what we're saying when we're talking about access. So,
And I think maybe working up some procedures, some basic, something in conjunction with what the state board provides, because a lot of their manuals are focused on reimbursement.
right, it's not process.
Rather than the real stuff.
Correct. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
And Sharon, when we start, I appreciate what you're saying. This is illuminating because I truly did not understand what you meant by templates. But, last time we met, I did suggest that maybe we have some informational sessions. And to me, I've thought a lot about this, how we can share information with you all so that it's useful. And in my mind, and this is just the way my brain thinks, I learn by doing. And, we would love to sit down and have you all look at each process that we go through. And in the process, you could see whatever documents we produce. Many of the things we do don't end in a document. They are all in a process. And we don't really rely on procedure manuals. So perhaps there are things that we need procedure manuals for. As far as the documents, I'm starting to understand better what you mean by the templates. For each election, all of the required documents, like the polling place charts and the change orders and stuff, those are available, but we keep them electronically in a election folder. So, those things for each election, they do look much the same each election. But to Commissioner Inman's point, they do change based on the kind of election. So, over the period of a 4-year election cycle, you end up using all of those templates. But we would be more than happy to share how we do things with you and get into as granular detail as you want. And we're prepared to do that whenever you all want to make time to do it. It is a little time consuming because each of our jobs is it's multi-layered and it's complex. But we're happy to do that, and we're ready to get started. I'm glad you mentioned it. We keep having these elections come up. When we're in an election cycle, we're fully occupied getting everything going. But that's not to say that we can't pull away for an hour a week to have a meeting with you all to show you different things, or whatever you all would like to do. We'll do.
No, I absolutely agree with you. I want to see that I'm a do person. I'm not somebody that, everything I've ever done, I've basically been thrown in it and figured it out. When I started over the voter registration side, I didn't even have an access to get into the system. and nobody would get me in. I finally figured out, I did it. And then I created a manual for everyone else to figure it out so that someone would walk in the door and not know even how to get in the system and know how to do it. And that's how my brain thinks. My brain thinks that if everybody was gone tomorrow, because we are not replaceable, but you have to think as in what it is about you and the special gifts and talents you have as a person are not replaceable. But we have to think about, we have to be able to, it's like train the, cross-train people, that somebody could come in if there was some type of crisis and they could come in and do that job and it would be fine. So when you talk about we don't have processes in place, we have to have process in place. You have to have those business processes in place for every function so that it doesn't fall down. So if you have a crisis or emergencies, like literally like if COVID took out everybody, right? And you had to replace everybody, then you have the ability for someone to walk in the door and they know it's not going to be perfect because they can't be the people, right? They don't have they don't have the talents of the people, but they can go and they can look at step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's not going to be intricate, but it's not the same as, like you're saying, as me watching you do all the different things and picking that up. They do need to be able to come in and be able to say, okay, I got to do this, and then I'm going to have to go over here and do this, and obviously I can't do those myself, so it's going to take 2 other people to come in and do this, this, and this. So it is imperative we have that, and that's that kind of like that disaster recovery plan, and that's what we need to have, and especially for a county this size, we have to have that. That's imperative. Yes, ma'am.
The Secretary of State provides the excellent calendar of things that must be done, and it recites the specific statute.
Yes.
Plus the law book has...
The statute and law book, and all due respect, that is not the same as a business process.
No, you have to do something by a certain day.
Mm-hmm.
It is your guide. It is their guide. It is our guide when we're setting up a major election. You have to do this and this and this and this.
But it doesn't show you how to work a machine. It doesn't show you how to program something. It doesn't show you, it doesn't tell you something of who do I contact to get a key to a room? Where do I go to the warehouse? Who's the person, how do I get to the truck? It doesn't say where is the truck parked. I mean, these are intricate pieces of information. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about disaster recovery. You have to understand all those intricate details. Where are all the documents located? Like if you have to think about, like, if I lost all power and didn't even have access to electronic information, how would I even run an election? If all I had were the paper ballots, but I didn't have the machines, how would I tabulate? How would I count?
You do it the old way.
Exactly, but how would that work? Who would I get in contact with? So it's all, that's what I'm getting to. We have to think that way. I mean, we have to get on that kind of level and really think that way. I mean, and you're kind of that guy because you're a DFA guy. So sorry, you know what I mean. But you can get on that level.
So I'm just curious, Sean, are there task lists? I understand it might not be written out in longhand. I mean, are there like task lists that are laid out what has to be done?
There are. I mean, just to kind of start at the top, when the last director left, what I had to run an election with was the checklist that comes out of your state board handbook, and that was it.
That was it.
So it worked, but we do. Each staff member we work with checklists, and it just go down the checklist. So we do have those. Some are more detailed than others, and there are, each one of us has information about how to do the different things. We don't have it in one place. Could someone come in from outside? Could we pull 6 people from the street and they run an election? Probably not with the way our current files. But I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think you're absolutely right, and the use of manuals is a very good tool, and you're right that there needs to be the ability to recover in the case of a disaster, to continue operating. I'm a big believer in that too. I think that there's work that there's some things we already have. There's a lot of work we need to do. I think as long as, and we're more than happy to open up our files, whatever it is that y'all are interested in seeing, and explain it all to you and show it to you. Out of context, it's going to mean nothing to you. That's why I think if we can do it in context, then it'll be more meaningful. Having said that, my job is to make sure that the staff stays focused on elections. So when we're in an election cycle, I try to minimize distractions from their primary tasks. And I'm not saying that this would be a major distraction. This could be an ongoing thing, but I just want to make sure I set expectations that when we have elections, we may not be able to pull away to do the other things because we may be fully engaged. Amanda and I were just sitting down today looking at the schedule for finding poll workers for this upcoming election we're talking about tonight. And it's a long process, a multi-week process. And during certain weeks, I mean, I'm on the phone from 8 to 4, and that's all I do all day for a couple of weeks. So, but anyway, I just want to set the expectation that as long as we can continue to focus on the elections, we're happy to move down that road.
Well, I think he's saying, and I mean, I'm hopeful that this is so, you do have tasks for everyone. You have a task for Bart, and you have a task for Jody, and you have a task for yourself, and Amanda has tasks. I think that would be helpful to get for us to, I mean, those task lists would be something you could start with, like a manual saying, in the event of a disaster recovery need, you'd have a place to begin. I mean, you've got to begin somewhere, right?
And those the checklists are something that I haven't checked lately, but they should be pretty much up to date.
You should
and
have
then,
them.
but there's not a lot of depth there because they're really designed for us to use, and so we know how to do those things on the list. But it's a place to start.
Well, so, and you have checklists for poll workers to follow and attest that they have fulfilled their duties. I mean, you have proof that they did it. So the same could be said for the task that I mean, it should be, I'm agreeing with you that it would be helpful to have that for anyone should they need it. It's not like you don't already do it. It's just so commonplace to what you do that you can't say or provide us exactly what we need. And Amanda's job is as complex as anyone in this whole operation because of the programming of the election. And that's something that would take months to learn through ESNA. But everything else, procedurally, could be, get that book and get an attorney in here and find the tasks, and an election could be held.
The checklist would be good. It's a start. I just don't want us to get a point, and I see this a lot, just working on different type of projects, because I'm a doer, and I just dive into things, and I work with other people that have to gather information a lot of times, and a lot of times they can't gather that information because they don't have it, and then all of a sudden it's like, because they're going to something brand new, right? And they can't gather it because they've never collected it. And I'm being very vague on purpose, but it's like, but we're going to this thing. You have no choice. So what are you going to do? Now you can't, we're going to it. this is like a new technology, right? So, but they haven't been gathering anything. They don't have any processes or anything. So now they're kind of in a dire situation. They can't really integrate anything. They have some problems, and I just don't want us to ever be there either, because technology changes all the time. And you know what happens? They're like, you can't use these type of election machines anymore. Now you're going to have to do this, and it changes everything. And that, it literally can change overnight, and it changes every process you have. And now listen, you have to have all this stuff ready the next day, but you don't, because we haven't done any of it. And we see it all the time, you know, and we don't want to be in that situation ever.
Well, I don't think we will be. I think we've
Ever.
got a handle on what we need, and I think you guys understand that.
And we say that, and look what COVID did. So things can change, and this, I think 2020 has been proof about how quickly things can change. And I think we just need, I like to be proactive and not reactive. And that is the goal here, is to be proactive and get ahead of things. So, and that is what we're going to do, is be proactive. And and the way I want us to start, and with the, you know, showing us what you guys do, is start at the beginning. You know, instead of like, you know, Amanda shows us something, what you do. I think it's better to start in order. So if you can come up with what would be the first thing, obviously none about this election, because we don't want to disrupt that, but think about that, you know, and let's start in order and go in order for the first task. So I think that would be the most helpful. So we're learning in order, you know, that way there's a logical order and logical sense to it.
And this is the first part of the preparing for an election, but they're already working on it.
Correct. So, did you have anything else?
Nothing.
I'm gonna hold on to others.
If you all want to wait just a minute, I'll go ahead and change
Absolutely.
this.
Thank
and
you.
I'll be right back. Shouldn't take more than about 3 or 4 minutes.
All right, thank you, Sean.
I have another comment about some of these dates, if you're so obliged to this.
I will listen.
So you have September 14th, which is the election day,
Yes.
not to begin the review of a regular or rejected ballots until 5 p.m.
Yes.
You know, we could start a week ahead
We cannot start a week ahead, and why do you think we can start a week ahead?
because the law allows the canvass to begin a week ahead. It's
We
usually-
cannot open the inner envelope until 8:30 a.m.
I get that.
Correct.
But the canvas part, looking at what the poll workers review have given you, where there's a questionable, you know, missing signature, missing this, missing that, you can already review that before 5 o'clock on election day.
Correct.
I'm not
And what are you
expecting-
proposing?
Well, I'm not expecting the volume to be what it was
Right.
in November, but that was part of the problems that you had
Well,
of waiting so late to
The
do that
part of the problems, well, we asked to actually start that morning, and we were denied. And we actually asked for all of them to be segmented out into different boxes and
Well,
times.
we can't revisit that.
No, we can't.
But we can,
But we
change the
we can look at, changing the process, but we also have to be realistic of what is available to those that work during the day.
well, the poll workers doing the canvas,
Correct.
they're gonna create their rejects or whatever, their
Correct.
questionables. And we could come in any day that week before and take a look, so that we wouldn't have to do that election night. And I will certainly be part of asking that we are able to do that beginning at 8:30 a.m. on election day as well, and not be denied access to it. It's just, you're just getting a jump on something that, and all the other counties do that anyway. They don't wait until election night for that commissioner's review.
No, they come in early that day.
But they come in a week before.
Not all counties do that, no.
Most counties do.
I've talked to many counties. I'm not gonna argue with you. We're not gonna debate
Okay,
on
well,
here.
no, I'm not gonna argue about that
So,
either, but I'm
the-
saying you can. There's nothing to
Commissioner
prevent
Inman,
that.
Some counties have been opening the inter-envelope. We're not gonna discuss that,
Well, we're not gonna do that.
because we're not gonna do that,
That's
because.
against the law.
Exactly. So, what we need to think about is the processes that have been put in place would have to be altered to accommodate a review, because in the past, that is not what Pulaski County has done. Ever. This commission, when you were on it, didn't do that. So, how would we accommodate a change in the process to not disrupt the poll workers' process and the training timeline for this election, to make sure that
We don't have to do anything.
let me finish. To make sure that, because what is the expectation of absentees for this election? And then their rejection rate, about, is around normally 10%. And then the rejection rate that we think we would have for those types of absentees. And then we would have to create a process in time so that we didn't disrupt their processing, to ensure that what we're doing in the space that we need, and that we're maintaining the security that's going to be required in the instructions that the state board's handing down, which we don't know what that is yet. So, what is your proposal?
Well, depending on the volume, we can adjust how we begin our review of problematic ballots, provisional ballots coming early, absentee. And, we could check with the canvassers. Do you have stacks of problem ballots? We could come here at 5 o'clock in the afternoon when they're not working, set up the thing and do our preliminary review and decide this one is actually cannot be counted, and it is out of the picture. Where you're not, have tons of boxes of ballots election night at 9 o'clock and stay up all night long. I'm trying to prevent that from happening again.
I know.
For your benefit and for the benefit of this board. And if you don't design a procedure like that, as we're talking about, we're gonna be in the same situation that happened in November.
But that needs to be a written process. It doesn't need to be a play it by ear process.
Well, of course not.
Right.
Of
So
course not.
what I'm asking you is, what is your suggestion? Have you written up something?
No, I haven't written it up. I'm
Will
bringing it up
will you
right now.
write something up?
Well, I can say it on here for everybody to hear, that we should see how many absentee ballots have come in once that canvass period starts, when they bring them over here. And you'll know how many workers you need, right? By the time you know how many are mailed out, how many come back. And then we can assess the need for, we need to come in early, or we need to come in on Wednesday of that week, or Friday of that week, and start our preliminary review.
Please write up a procedure that you think we can do. And because we can't do it can't be a what if. Well, I mean, I don't know about you, but I can't play what ifs. So we need to we're going to come in on these days. We're going to call a meeting on these days.
You have to call a meeting.
We're going to call a meeting in advance on these days to review irregulars. And if we don't have to review irregulars, we go home. But we're going to call a meeting, and this is how we're going to maintain ballot security. We're going to do it in this room. This is what we need to do. We need to outline this plan. But if you could come up with a procedure that we can run by and make sure it falls in line with whatever the state board is handing down as instruction. That's my concern, just making sure that we're aligning with whatever they're about to give us. I don't have a problem with that. Do you have a problem with that?
No.
I don't have a problem with that. I would like to get an idea of an estimate of how many ballots they're thinking we're going to have for this election.
And we'll know that once they're printed and the absentee applications start coming in and ballots start going in.
Well, we should know the request for the.
412, so.
Thank you. Thank you. So, if you don't mind leading the charge.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Because we need to go ahead and get that approved. And we can call a Zoom meeting in fact, we need to take a vote on doing that, while you're on vacation.
Well, I don't think you need to do it at that time, during that time.
Beforehand, we need to do
I will
that.
have to, you know what I'm saying, I'm leaving Wednesday,
Okay,
but it'll be in.
but you'll be
time
back
the-
before, okay.
Well, certainly I'll be back for the August 25th meeting.
This is on different paper, does it matter?
It's on bond paper.
No, this last page.
Darn it. It's
I don't know.
about 20 pages in there.
It's just this one page.
Just the last page is on the,
Yeah.
okay, let me print it off.
And we can go ahead and look at it real quick.
I have one this page.
Here's the, I'm ready to get out of here. Here you go.
No, doesn't work. Let me print it off.
Oh, don't sign that last page, he's printing it.
I was printing new one.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's printing a new
Yeah, that is a thin one.
one. Yeah.
All right.
The most important page is the signature
Let
page.
me have that signature page.
Okay.
I've already signed the bad one.
Here, if you wanna look over these.
If y'all have that back, then I'll.
Is that the back?
Yeah, look.
Wrong.
There's the good.
Is that better? Stack it there. And I made some of the changes you recommended about the drives and roads and a couple of them like Parkway Place. That's the name of the street. I don't know if it's a drive or what, we don't have that. Anyway,
Thank you.
Fraser Pike or,
Thank you.
but we'll make sure that we get that updated to where everything's got the correct nomenclature.
The one on the proclamation too.
It's funny, I can always tell if it's bond paper, it's like. Okay. Does anybody have anything else?
Nothing from me.
Any public comment?
Nothing on the YouTube channel.
Any public comment? Okay. Did y'all have anything else? If you could just make sure that we're keeping up with the absentee count.
Yeah, it went up by 413, but we will absolutely keep up with that and, you
The
know.
poll worker count,
What's
and
that?
the poll worker count. How many we need and how many we
Yeah, I mean, we will know that. Unfortunately, we won't really know that until your next meeting, I mean, your August meeting. We'll be sending out letters to them either the end of next week or the very beginning of the following week. And then that, we give them about 2 weeks for the judges to talk to their crew, see who's coming back. And then we'll start the process of kind of recruiting. We should have plenty, because we had high staffing levels in the general election. We lose a lot of people after a presidential general, so we have resources to pull from.
But we know how many we need based on the number of sites we have, is what I
Yeah.
meant, okay.
Right,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, all right. Thank you, and thank y'all for getting everything organized. Our next meeting is July 20th, correct? Okay, that's on Tuesday at 5 p.m. I'll set it 2 p.m. Tuesday at 5 p.m. Thank y'all, and have a good weekend.